So, I've made a video about this same exact topic, but this video was during the time when I thought I was smarter than people that I wasn't smarter than. So now that I have gathered more than the necessary amount of information and experience required, I will do my best to remake this video in hopes of reaching the people that need it most, while also actually giving good information this time around. Be sure to like and subscribe if you enjoy. Now let's begin. But let's go over how this— wow, that was a terrible voice crack. First, we are going to take a quick look at how this video will be arranged. This particular video will be divided into chapters. The timestamps and whatnot are in the description if you want to skip ahead, but here's a summary of each chapter just in case you want to skip ahead and find the chapter that best suits you. Chapter 1. Proper Team Building Introduction. Basically what this section is the section where we explain basic things you should go about doing and whatnot while doing team building. Chapter 2. What makes a viable DPS. Basically what this section is about is what makes a DPS good and whatnot. Chapter 3. What makes a viable support. This section is about what supports are go-tos and what makes a good support unit. Chapter 4. What makes a good sustainer. Basically this is going to explain what makes a sustainer viable and what sustainers you should really be using. And finally, Chapter 5. Filling slots. Wow. God fucking damn it, dude. Chapter 5. Filling slots. This will bring all 4 previous chapters together in the final main section of the video. This chapter will be about how to go about building your teams and what teams are skill point efficient and other things. Now without further ado, let's get started. So, to start off, I feel like I should talk about the main focus for every Honkai Star Rail account. What every Honkai Star Rail account should focus on is getting the units you want or getting the units you need at the start of the game. Then, try to improve what you currently have, and then repeat the cycle to keep your account healthy. What do I mean by this? Let's say for example that you're planning on being a casual player, and you start to get a V.2 Herta, and you do not care in the slightest what the meta DPS units are, you don't care what does more damage, you just want to use Herta. You like her design, kudo. First things first, you need to build her to be top notch. Not actual 0 cycle top notch, but I'm just using an expression. Pretty much what you want her is for her to be good enough to where she won't die and you can put out decent damage with her. Now what's compelling me to say this is 1, the mindset of pulling for what you want that people like to, use to completely corrupt their account, and 2, the fact that you can make any unit work as long as you aren't stupid when trying to do so. Now let's talk about how to approach a mindset like previously mentioned. You see, there are 2 mindsets when it comes to pulling in Honkai Star Rail, going for meta and going for what you like. I personally fall in an interesting gray area where I pull for the meta but also pull for what I like. If a character looks cool and ends up being completely shit, then I personally, it's not worth my time. I want the character I like to be good, and so I set my sights on them the second their drip marketing comes out because, they look cool. Then I wait for opinions from professionals and guide makers and just, what the live stream says in general, and see if it's a good idea to actually get them or not. And then I make my own evaluations. One great example of my thought process is Ruan Mei, my hardest era in Honkai Star Rail yet. About 3 months before this video was released, I decided to take the biggest gamble to date in my Honkai Star Rail journey, and that decision was to skip the entirety of 1.6's banners. This gamble was skipping on an insane unit like Ruan Mei and skipping Dr. Ratio because we were already getting for free, and instead going for Sparkle and Black Swan. This decision was influenced by the fact that I failed the 50-50 on Huohuo's banner after getting 2 copies of her. I wanted Black Swan and Sparkle more than I wanted Ruan Mei, and I felt that Ruan Mei wasn't worth a failed 50-50 in comparison to those 2. And guess what? My gamble was fucking correct. Going after a unit like Sparkle, who'd be amazing in any fucking team comp that was super skill point inefficient, and going after Black Swan, who was going to revive one of the shittiest units on my account but with the most potential, that was the best decision I could have ever made in my career. But what I'm getting here at is this: if you decide that you're going to main a unit, that's cool, But the second you decide that other characters are obsolete and have no value, that could, and probably would, mess up your team making skills and screw over your account tenfold. Trust me, I have done this before, and I learned my lesson. If you end up doing this, you will have a long road of recovery ahead of you. Now let's move on to Chapter 2. When you think of DPS, you probably think of someone like Jingliu, Dill, or Acheron. These are your damage powerhouses, and they will be the things that eradicate bosses and help you grind materials for other characters. So how do we go about these characters? Well, here's the thing. Some DPS are better than others, that's just a fact. But everything also depends on how your account is and what you want to do with it. But if you don't expand on that and build them correctly, or if you make a bad team, you won't get far in the game. Here's what I mean. Say you pull Blade. You should then try and build him on good health, and a team that keeps him alive, and also boosts his damage. Of course, if you want a guide on a character like that, refer to the guide makers who have the proper advice and knowledge of building characters. But here's where the issues arise. Wanting your favorite characters is fine, but crowning them all into one team is not always fine. You will not always get anything done if you do that. Here's a great example. Aventurine. I made a video on this, but let's just get back on topic here. Aventurine is a boss in Honkai Star Rail version 2.1, and a lot of people struggle on him because they got a reality check. That reality check, being that slamming 3 DPS and a Bailu onto a team, will get you nowhere. If you have multiple DPS, you should build teams around those DPS. However, some double DPS teams like Jingliu and Blade can function due to the synergy, but if you do a team like Dill, Argenti, Blade, and Natasha, you will not have any skill point efficiency, nor will your team last more than 3 fucking minutes. Trust me, I understand. I thought Bailu was gonna be the best healer for a while because she had a great revive passive whenever the people on her team died. But here's the thing: if you use the units you like, but it brings you down, you're not having fun. I'm sorry to say, you're just not. I literally cannot stress this enough. If you are going to play this game, you have to, you can get the characters you like, but you have to build a team that revolves around them being good. If you have a team like Argenti, Dill, Blade, and Bailu or something, you're not gonna get anything done. You're just gonna keep dying a bunch of times, and then you're gonna go on Twitter and complain about oh, this boss is so hard and whatnot, when it's just your shit team making skills. Now, I have a team full of characters I like, and here's how it is. One character I like is Acheron, the other character I like is Sparkle, and the other character I like is Welt. Now, here's the thing about that team. I slapped Huohuo in there as well, because I don't really like Huohuo as a character, but I absolutely love what she does for my team. And what she provides is good healing, good attack boosting, and energy regen. And Welt applies debuffs for Acheron to get her stacks up, and Sparkle advances Acheron's action while also improving her crit damage. That's a super weird looking team, but guess what? I beat MOC12 with it! Welt is there to apply debuffs for Acheron. One of those debuffs is slow, and if you slow an enemy, that means everybody has a big opportunity to do more damage. And Sparkle makes Acheron act even quicker. And Acheron does great damage, and Huohuo can keep the team alive that's making Acheron do all that damage. It's an exotic team. But do you notice how I made it work? Again, a team like Argenti, Dill, Blade, and Bailu is not going to work because they don't synergize together. You gotta make the team synergize. You just gotta make them work. If they don't work, you're not gonna get anything done. Enough of my rant. We're gonna go on to chapter 3 now. And this is going to be what makes a viable support. Let's get into it. Now, before we learn how to build a proper team, we need to talk about sustainers and supports. But first, we're going to talk about supports. Your support units are the units that can really make your DPS and or sub-DPS units shine. These units are the absolute bread and butter in any team. since you don't even need a sustainer in the endgame content sometimes. So, what are the best supports? And to tell you that, I tell you this. Take a look at what's on your account. That's a very vague and empty statement, I know, but really think for a second. Look at what's on your account. Look at what DPS units you have. Look at what they need. Look at what you will need. And try and figure out what the best support units will be for you. This isn't me being lazy, it's the best advice I can give, because the support units you choose in a team entirely depend on what type of team you're building. For example, let's say you're building a damage over time team, or a dot team, which is a team that relies on shock, burn, bleed, wind shear, and arcana debuffs. What each of these debuffs depend on, if they're implanted by a unit, is the unit's attack. So you would want to get an attack boosting unit like Tingyun or Asta. If you're building a team around units like Dr. Ratio and Acheron that need debuffs to do damage, you would want units like Silverwolf and Pela. And if you got a team revolving around units like Jingliu or Blade, you would want anything that boosts attack or crit. This is what I mean by taking a look at your account. See what units you have and determine what support or supports will go on your team. But most teams can't operate without good defense. Sustainer units are units that will prevent your team from dying, either by restoring your health or prolonging the battle with shields. Now, I've mentioned healers a lot before this section. I'm pretty sure I did. So surely I have a good idea of what sustainer is the best one, right? Well, that also depends on when you're watching this video. For me, the best sustainers right now are units like Fushuan, Hoho, and Locha. These three at the time of recording this are units you think of when you think of sustain. So, what exactly makes these guys good sustainers? And to find that out, we are going to dive into their kits to see exactly what they do. Fushuan takes the damage the team takes upon herself and fully restores her health by herself when she gets low. Woho grants healing in almost every scenario possible while also having generous amounts of healing when doing so, not to mention the attack boost and the energy regeneration ultimate. Then there's Locha, who has an auto heal. Get it? Like from Honkai and back third? I'll shut up, I'm sorry. Locha has an auto heal whenever allies get low. Whenever you use his skill or ultimate, you get Abyss Flower stacks. And Abyss Flower stacks eventually summon a field that provides more healing. These healers provide lots of healing while also having a gimmick behind their methods. So then, what doesn't make a sustainer? Now this question I have is mainly formed around the fact that not all healers and shielders do what they really like. They give like a very low amount of healing and shields. A healer or shielder may heal or shield your team. Try and say that 3 times fast. But unless that is a foolproof method of stopping your team from dying without the need for another healer or shielder, I truly don't think that that's sustaining. That is more like stalling. Let me explain what I mean by this. If you are stalling, you are delaying the inevitable from happening. That inevitable being that your team is going to die if you have a bad healer or shielder on your team. Now, if you have a sustainer on your team, a true sustainer, that inevitable that happens with a staller is not going to happen. Your team is going to stay alive, and you're not going to die. If your unit is healing or shielding for low numbers and needs another shielder or healer to keep the team alive, you are missing out on big numbers. And you need to get yourself an actual sustainer. Obviously, some people might just have bad builds, but if the builds are as best as they can be and still require another healer or shielder to keep the team alive, deny it as much as you want. That is not true sustain. Now then, we have discussed every type of character in the game. Let's move on to building your team. If you're just starting the game and you need a good team, you want to focus on obtaining a good team that looks like this. This team has a DPS, a support unit, another support, and a healer. This is the ideal type of team that you want to go for. But although I talked about how shielder plus healer team comps are inefficient, don't beat yourself up if that's all you can do at the moment. Trust me, I was at that point in my life. You'll overcome it eventually. Sustainers you get at the start of the game are units like March, Natasha, and eventually when you complete the main story in Belobog, you'll unlock the Fire MC. Other aspects to focus on when team building is skill point efficiency. To remain skill point efficient, you want to do your best to keep as many skill points as possible for your DPS, and support units to kill the enemies. Units like Tingyun and Locha are skill point efficient, since you use their skill and whatnot when you need to, giving your DPS ample time to get some damage in before needing a refresh on health and buffs. Units like Sparkle that focus on massive skill point usage make skill point efficiency a lot easier to try and think about, considering you can get a ton of skill points just from having her on the team. Now another thing to think about that usually doesn't matter for me personally is enemy weakness. Enemy weaknesses determine what elements they take more damage to and what elements they will have more resistance to. For things like the Quantum set, that ignores defense for enemies with quantum weaknesses. This is one way to gain lots more damage. You should also check the enemy's resistances so you know what damages and debuffs they resist in the future. And finally, you want to think about the path the unit follows. For paths like Nihility, your Nihility DPS will typically want other debuffers on their team. Other paths depend on the character that's doing your damage. That was a lot, but I sure do hope this helped. The main thing that compelled me to make this video was the fact that more and more people are struggling on bosses, and if an issue like this isn't confronted, that's less players that want to play when they can simply fix their account like this. And this issue needs to be confronted now, since more and more bosses are dropping each patch, and if you don't have the means of countering those bosses, then you'll be in a whole lot of trouble. Anyways, that's enough out of me. If you enjoyed, please be sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more. Comment down below if I may have missed anything or what you would like to see next, and I'll see you in the next one.